The game Jeu de Paume, which translates to Game of Palm, was first invented by European monks and it was used for entertainment during ceremonies. In the 14th century, the game Jeu de Paume began to spread throughout Europe and began to evolve. Italy invented the first rackets in 1853 and made them out of wood. And then the game of tennis slowly derived from Jeu de Paume. The name tennis comes from the French word tenez, which they would shout at the beginning of a point in Jeu de Paume. It translates to hold. The scoring of tennis, however, is not very clear on how it was invented. The score for a game goes love, 15, 30, 40, game. The best theory is that if you divide a clock into 4 different sections, you have the 15-minute mark, the 30-minute mark, and the 45-minute mark. However, because of the rule of deuce and how you have to win by 2 points, the 45-minute mark gets split into the 40 and 50-minute mark. So, while we're on scoring, the way scoring works in tennis is that there are games, sets, and then you win the match. There are multiple ways to play, whether it be an 8-game pro set, best of 3, or as they play in men's professional tennis, best of 5. To win one game, you must win 4 points but win by 2. And the scoring again goes love, 15, 30, 40. If it's tied at 40 all, then it's called deuce. Deuce comes from the French phrase à deux le jeu, which translates to the game. And love comes from the French word l'œuf, which they used to say instead of zero or love. L'œuf translates to egg. To win a set, it is the first person to 6 games, but they must be up by 2. So if it's 6-5 in games, then the person with 6 must win another game to get the set. But if the person with 5 wins the next game and brings it to 6-6, then the game tiebreaker starts, which is the first person to 7 points win by 2. The scoring is, again, quite confusing, and there's people that even play tennis and still don't understand it. So now that the confusing stuff's out of the way, we can get back to the history. It wasn't until 1873 that the modern version of tennis was invented. Up until then, tennis was played indoors, but in 1873, Major Walter Wingfield developed a version of tennis that could be played outdoors. Tennis balls used to be made from wood and filled with cellulose material to give it bounce, but when Wingfield developed the new version of tennis, he introduced the Indian rubber ball. This new tennis was called Sphäristike and was the beginning of modern tennis. Wingfield's game of Sphäristike was distributed in boxes that contained net posts, a net, a racket, Indian rubber balls, and instructions on how to play the game. However, Wingfield quickly realized that the name Sphäristike didn't really work, so he decided to go with the name lawn tennis instead. The next year, Mary Outbridge brought tennis to America. After an All-England Croquet Club was convinced to replace a croquet court with a lawn tennis court in 1875, the Marylebone Cricket Club followed in suit. The Marylebone Cricket Club then made significant changes to the game. They added deuce, advantage, and 2 serves instead of 1. They also changed the court from its previous shape, an hourglass, and made it into a rectangle which has the same measurements as the current courts used today. In 1877, the first World Championship was held in Wimbledon, London. There was only one event, and it was men's singles, which had 22 participants. The first ever winner of an official tennis tournament was Spencer Gore. In 1880, the Renshaw brothers introduced the overhead during Wimbledon, and they continued to dominate for a decade. In 1881, America developed the United States National Lawn Tennis Association, known as the USNLTA, known today as the United States Tennis Association, USTA. That same year, the USNLTA hosted its first national tournament, which was limited to American participants only, and the winner of this tournament was Dick Sears. This tournament later evolved into the US Open. In 1884, Wimbledon opened to women for the first time, and the first woman to win Wimbledon was Maud Watson. Oh yeah, and men's doubles was also introduced for the first time, but who cares about doubles, right? Then, in 1891, the first French Open was hosted, and the first winner of the French Open was H. Briggs. I couldn't really find a first name on that. In 1896, tennis was incorporated as one of the core sports in the Olympics. Then, in 1900, Dwight Davis, a Harvard student, decided to have a team challenge match between America and the British Isles. This then turned into the Davis Cup, which is similar to other tournaments, such as the French Open and US Open, but instead of single contestants, it's teams from different countries that compete in a knockout format. In 1905, the Australian Open started, with its first singles winner being Rodney Heath, who defeated Albert Curtis in the final. In 1924, tennis retired from the Olympics due to a lack of professionalism and the Olympic Games not wanting to have Wimbledon scheduled the same year as the Olympics. In 1927, the French win the Davis Cup, and with this, the French national associations get land on the edge of Paris to build a new stadium which is called the Roland Garros Stadium, named after a French World War I hero. The next year, the stadium hosts its first French Open. In 1930, the previously used one-piece ash rackets are replaced with laminated wood rackets. In 1938, the first Grand Slam was achieved by Don Budge, a Grand Slam being where someone wins all 4 of the Open tournaments in the same year. In 1950, the Pro Tour becomes popular. However, the problem with that is that the current championship tournaments aren't open tournaments yet, so only amateurs can play in them. In 1960, it's debated to make the 4 championship tournaments open, however the idea was defeated by 5 votes. In 1967, Wilson introduced the first metal rackets and holds a demonstrational tournament that is open to all players. This helps with the movement to make championship tournaments open. 1968 marks the open era of tennis when French Championship turns into the French Open and other tournaments follow in suit. In 1970, the tiebreaker was introduced into Grand Slam tennis, however it is originally played as first one to 5 points. In 1975, aluminum rackets were made by a company called Weed, however the rackets never really caught on. The next year, Howard Head made a brand of rackets called Prince that had larger heads to allow a larger sweet spot and more power. These rackets caught on, unlike the Weed rackets. Then, in 1980, graphite rackets were introduced, completely replacing the obsolete wooden rackets. In 1984, clay courts are introduced, originally to serve as an option for ties during the Davis Cup. Tennis is also added back into the Olympics. In 1994, grass courts are introduced in the new Australian stadium that features a retractable roof. In 2002, we see the rise of probably the most well-known women's tennis players, Venus and Serena Williams, as they reach number 1 and number 2 worldwide tennis rankings. 2004 is considered to be the year of Roger Federer, as he sets a record by winning his 13th consecutive finals match. Just look at that man. Roger Federer just screams tennis. This is the type of player everyone aspires to be like. I mean, just look at that form. It's amazing. But Roger Federer can actually do some very impressive things, such as this. Yeah. I mean, even Sharapova tried to do that, and this is how that ended up. Ooh. Ouch. Poor Djokovic. Poor Djokovic.
And please don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
God.
In 2005, the 10-point tiebreaker is adapted into tournaments. In 2006, arguably the greatest showman in tennis history, Andre Agassi, retires.
Kids to do the talking.
Comment on something. You're not very intimidating.
I know.
No. You're disarming or something. You're very Swiss. I don't know what it is, but it's
Very neutral, you know, very relaxed.
that was the best you got, wasn't it?
And in 2007, Rafael Nadal makes his presence known in tennis, claiming 81 straight wins on clay courts. There's even a tennis court located at the White House near the south side of the West Wing. In 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt had this court built, and his buddies that he would play with were often referred to as his tennis cabinet. Other presidents have also used this court, such as Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and George Bush. Even Obama and his family avidly used this court. Aw, just look how happy he is. And it wouldn't be a tennis video without some grunts. Oh, why not? Let's add a few racket smashes in there as well. Well, now it's about time to wrap things up, so why don't you sing me out, boys?
Everybody needs a little time away.
Now, this video only covered a portion of the history of tennis. There's still many more things, like the ATP Foundation, how it's changed throughout history, and other things as well. And even though tennis is not an American sport, this still relates to American history because tennis is widely played in America and is a large part of many American lives.
From each other, hold me now. It's hard for me to say I'm sorry. I just want you to know. Hold me now, I really wanna tell you I'm sorry.
I could never let you go.
After all that we've been through, I will make it up to you. I promise to. And after all that's been said,